Hey everyone, thank you for joining me here on Retro Geek Gaming, where we like to talk about stuff that's mostly gaming related. Thank you for joining me for today's video, where we're going to talk about the Nintendo Direct that was recently announced. To me, this Nintendo Direct says a lot. If you watched it, or if after you've seen what I talk about here, I'm going to mostly just talk about the highlights. I'm not going to talk about every single game. I'm just going to talk about some of the stuff that, to me, was the most noteworthy and the most telling. And then, of course, I'm going to give you my thoughts at the end of that video, or this video. So if you've had a chance to see it, or anything you want to share your thoughts in the comments down below, love to hear what you guys have to think. But I think that for me, like I've already said, this Nintendo Direct says a lot about the direction Nintendo's going to go, and I think it'll be abundantly clear by the time we get to the end of this video, if not beforehand. So let's go ahead and get started with this. So the very first thing that they spoke on was the Splatoon 3 expansion pack side order that's coming in spring of 2024. You can see it up on the video now. This wasn't really that big of a surprise. We knew that Nintendo was working on this expansion pass. They talked about it, I think, last year, back when Splatoon 3 was coming out, and then they released the Agopolis one. So here it is, the side order, single player, almost like the Octopass expansion that Splatoon 2 had. It looks like it's going to be very interesting, what they're going to do with that. But, I mean, it's just Splatoon 3. It's just the usual fare when it comes to Splatoon 3, splatting stuff, and just enjoying the story part of it. The next thing they announced was a Switch remake of the original Mario vs. Donkey Kong game, which I think came out on the Game Boy Advance? Maybe it was a DS game? But you're going to notice a theme of this happening, so that's a big spoiler. A theme of this happening throughout this whole Nintendo Direct, which we'll talk about again at the end of this video. But yeah, they talked about Mario vs. Donkey Kong coming to the Nintendo Switch. Now they also touched on, like, again, Mario RPG, so Mario RPG, another remake. They talked about Prince of Persia, which is a port of the newest Prince of Persia that's coming out, some racing games, and as you can see here, a game that I was actually going to consider buying for my DS here recently, until this was announced. Another Code Recollection. Now this actually surprised me, because I thought they were done with Another Code. But this is kind of something where it's like, well, maybe they're not done with Another Code, because here is the Nintendo DS remake, and it also includes the sequel that came out for the Wii that never came out in North America. I think it was only in Japan. So that's something else that I applaud Nintendo for doing, because they did this with the Fatal Frame game that came out for the Wii, and now Another Code that came out for the Wii. Games that never came over to the US are now coming to the Switch. Wouldn't it have been nice if this was something that came out a little bit sooner? Because, again, we were kind of off the cusp of the Wii U, and so showing... But again, another port of an older game, essentially. Now, of course, they showed off what is basically the essential of the game, and you're seeing some gameplay footage of it right now. The new Princess Peach game that's coming for the Switch. It looks pretty tight. It looks like it's going to be a typical Mario game where you have costumes that give you different abilities. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be pretty cool. I think that's one of the highlights of this. Is it a game that people are really in demand for? No, not really. I think it's going to be still more of a niche game. But it's something that looks like it will interest me. Just because of the fact is that I typically kind of like this kind of stuff. So it looks like it'll be a fun little platformer to play. They announced Tomb Raider, they announced some more Saga games, again a bunch of ports of older games. Here is Trombone Champion or whatever it is, which is actually using the IR sensor, so I applaud Nintendo for actually using your IR sensor 7 years after the console has come out. But, you know, at least you're still using it every now and then. But yeah, this is another game that, again, was on PC that they're bringing over to the Switch. More games like Contra, I think I already said Tomb Raider, just a bunch of, again, older games, and then what is probably the weirdest game name that I've ever heard, Unicorn Overlord, apparently is coming from Atlas, so if that's your kind of thing, then cool. There was talks of Luigi's Mansion 2, And yeah, just this game, F-Zero 99, which is a Battle Royale excuse to bring back F-Zero, which I guess is sort of going to be a cool little thing, because maybe if this generates enough interest, this will bring back F-Zero. There was rumors of there being a GX remake that was not showing up anywhere in this. But in case it's not abundantly clear at this point, basically they're just showing off a bunch of ports and remakes on the Switch at this point. So what that means for the Switch is, again, what something we'll talk about at the end of the video. There was talks of the Mario Kart DLC that's coming out, a bunch of RPG games. They were talking about, as you can see here, they just kind of gave a rundown of games that you can expect all the way up into around spring of 2024. And then, of course, one of the last big surprises was something that I'm sure that people probably weren't thinking was going to be it, but it is what it is. The big final reveal was, and if it's your kind of thing, it's your kind of thing, but the big final reveal was Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. Again, another GameCube port coming to the Switch. So, what does this mean for this system? Well, I think it's abundantly clear what it means for this system, is that Nintendo is basically, and something that I've been saying for a while, they're at the end of this life cycle. Now, I know how Nintendo works. They did this with the Wii U. They typically do this a lot. And you see this a lot even from other manufacturers of gaming consoles like Sony and Microsoft. This isn't just something that Nintendo does. It just seems like Nintendo's the most notorious for doing it, is they start to just bring over a bunch of remakes and ports when the system is close to being over, because they still need to support it. They still need to have those millions and millions of people that bought the system to see, hey, look, we still have these games coming out, but you're not going to get a new Mario game. You're not going to get a new Metroid game. You're not going to get those until the next system comes out. So for me, this is just proof, because there was no announcement of Metroid Prime 4 in here. I wasn't expecting there to be an announcement of Metroid Prime 4 in here. I wasn't expecting there to be really anything of notoriety, but I was pleasantly surprised by another code. I was pleasantly surprised by the Princess Peach game. But again, we knew that the Princess Peach game was coming because they showed that at the last Nintendo Direct. So this means that the January Nintendo Direct is 2024, and that one may be the surprise one. That one may be the surprise that in January they say these are the last of the Switch games coming out, and they show Metroid Prime 4 there, because so far we've seen games that Nintendo hasn't even announced, like again, Thousand Year Door, and we've seen Princess Peach, and we've seen another code, and just all these ports and these remakes coming, and Nintendo never said was coming to the Switch. But it did say that Metroid Prime 4 is coming. Now, I know that this has been a tumultuous development cycle for it, where they've had to start over again, and it seems like they just continue to hire for it, so they're probably starting over and over again. But let's face it, at this point, I think that Metroid Prime 2 is a Switch 2 game. It's a next-gen console at this point. Either that or it's a vaporware and it's never going to come. And by the time it comes, people aren't going to care anymore, because we're going to be at a point then to where it's like, hey, you said this game was coming like a decade ago, and yeah, no one, we've moved on. Now, I'm still excited to play these games. You know, Mario Wonder and Princess Peach are definitely high up there on games that I'm looking forward to playing on the Switch. But compare that to the Mario Odyssey and the ARMS and the stuff that felt new and original. You know, we're still milking Mario Kart 8 from the Wii U grave. We're digging up old franchises from the GameCube and the DS to just fluff out the library of the Switch to give it maybe another few more months, because everything that we've seen here is stretched out until, I think, summer 2024 was the highest I think I saw a game go to. So does that mean that by summer of 2024 at E3 that they show, well, I'm sorry, not even at E3, I guess it would be Summer Games Fest or whatever the equivalent would be that they'd want to show it during the summertime, is when we're going to see the next-gen console? Most likely. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it come December or January, so that way they kind of get a leg up in January and say, hey, this console's ready to go, and all these games that you saw come out recently. They're still going to come out for the Switch. And in fact, the Switch 2 is going to be backwards compatible, so you can still play them and not have to worry about missing out. That's what I think this means. Because as the system gets older and older, we're seeing more and more ports of like PS3 games, Wii games, DS games, GameCube games, which it seems like if you're going to bring over so many GameCube games, it would have been easier just to have included GameCube in the expansion pass, but I digress. That's neither here nor there for me to debate with, because Nintendo needs to get that money somehow, I guess. But all I'm saying is, like, this was probably maybe a mid. There was still some excitement in there. I was still excited again to see another code. And I was still interested in some of the stuff that they did show. But by the time you get to the end of the presentation, they give you that, here's that one more game, and it's not Metroid Prime. It's not Donkey Kong 3D. Because you heard there was a new Donkey Kong game being developed, but apparently it's just Donkey Kong versus Mario. It's not a new 3D Odyssey-like Donkey Kong game. It's not even a 2D Tropical Freeze Donkey Kong Returns-like game. It's literally just Donkey Kong versus Mario, which is fine. It looks like it's interesting. I never really played Donkey Kong versus Mario, so I don't know if I'm going to enjoy that, but it looks interesting and I might check it out. So that's 3 games, at least, that I'm interested in, they've announced. But when we're at a point now to we're getting nothing but these ports and these remakes on the system, it's really starting to show its age. And we know, because they did this with the Wii U. A little bit of history, in case you didn't know, and at this point you want to tune out, that's perfectly fine. I know I've gone over the 10-minute limit that I gave myself. But at this point in time, a few years ago, I believe, we basically were seeing the end of the Wii U, and Nintendo was talking about, like, when's the next Mario game going to come out? People were asking them when the next Mario game is going to come out. And Shigeru Miyamoto basically came out and just said, hey, you can expect it on the next console. They basically were telling us, there's another console in the works. You can forget about the Wii U. And this, to me, is exactly what we're seeing from the Nintendo Switch. People were asking, hey, where's Metroid Prime 4? Hey, you could probably expect that on the next console. Forget about the Switch at this point. Still enjoy it. We still got games coming out for it. But don't expect anything new and revolutionary. Super Mario Wonder is probably going to be it. Maybe Princess Peach is probably going to be it. And then after that, a bunch of ports and remakes. And this is exactly the point that I was getting at all those months ago, when we were starting to see, was it the summer one, or was it the January one, where they were talking about, here are these games that are coming over the next 6 months. And you mean to tell me that, like, in the November, December reveal for games, you don't want to talk about big Metroid Prime that could be a holiday seller? You're going to probably save that for, what, holiday next year? That means that's going to probably be shown off in January or even in the summer, whenever they do their summer direct, which means it's probably going to be a next-gen Switch, because unless they're going to stretch this thing out into 2025, which I believe is a huge mistake to try to keep the Switch around for another year, maybe as a companion, kind of like what I think the what was it? The Wii U and the Switch were out around the same time, because you had Breath of the Wild that came out on both, you know, or like a side-by-side where this is the new console, like they did with the PS4 and the PS5, basically, where these consoles still coexist, they're still being manufactured, and games are still coming out for both, but we're still really going to focus on the current one. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that, and a lot of these games are Switch 2 games that basically are, you know, hand in hand. You're still going to be able to play your Switch, but if you have a Switch 2, you're still going to be able to play these same games, maybe upscaled, maybe in a faster frame rate. I don't know what they're going to do. But I mean, if they are going to continue to have backwards compatibility, then you've already basically seen what the Switch is, because they have to have that IR sensor in there for certain games, like the WarioWare game that's using it, and for the Trombone Champion game that's using it. So whether or not they're going to continue to stretch the Switch out and all the way through 2024 and then 2025 we get it, I certainly hope not, because that to me would then be the cliff. Okay? So, my final thoughts on this. I mentioned the cliff just a little bit ago. Nintendo, I know you don't watch my videos, and I know that there's probably going to be 2 people that watch this video, and that's fine. But listen, we are at the cliff. Okay? You're sitting there talking about this, the new president is talking about how he doesn't want to take Nintendo off a cliff. And you know what? That's fine. You don't want to go off a cliff. You don't want to do like you've been doing before with previous Nintendo consoles, where basically the system is bled dry and no one is playing it anymore, and no one cares about the games you announce for it anymore. So that way by the time you release the next console, it's an uphill battle to try to get people to buy it and come back to it. I'm here to tell you now, Nintendo, you're on that cliff. This Direct proves it. There was nothing new here other than additional DLC for Mario Kart 8, which we already knew about. This was the final wave, and they showed off some stuff for it. And Princess Peach. That's it. Luigi's Mansion 2, remake. Thousand Year Door, remake. Prince of Persia, a port. Super Mario RPG, remake. Mario vs. Donkey Kong, remake. You're just releasing ports and remakes of games. There's nothing new here other than 2 games, and that's Mario Wonder and Princess Peach. So you're here. You're on the cliff. And at this point, if you ask me, if you don't announce a new system in 2024, and you try to drag the system out until 2024, all the way to try to maybe drag it out into 2025, I think you're going to lose people. I think you're going to lose the trust of the thousands, millions of people that have bought this console. And you're going to have that uphill battle that this new president is talking about how he wants to avoid, because it is a catch-22 situation. It's a double-edged sword, where do we continue to try to support a console that we know is selling well, and the software is selling well because we can continue to do that, or do we go ahead? And the answer is just do both. It's simple. Do both. Sony's done it. Microsoft has done it. We've seen Xbox One, Xbox Series S games. We've seen PS4 games come out for these less powerful consoles that have a new, more powerful version, a new, more capable version. You can come out with a new, more capable Switch that, even if it's just for digital games, because maybe you can't do it physically, is backwards compatible, so people can still enjoy those games. And maybe you can come out with some kind of a voucher system to where if they can provide the serial number, or they can pop in the original Switch game and prove that they own it, they can get a digital download of it on the new Switch or something. I don't know how you want to do it, okay? But that to me seems like it's the best option. If you have the original Switch, these games are still coming to it. If you have a new Switch, then you have these games coming to it. Because it's exactly what I did to justify my purchase of the Switch. Because I could have bought Breath of the Wild on the Wii U. But I thought, man, I really want to buy the Switch. And we have 1-2 Switch. And we have Breath of the Wild. And we have ARMS. I want to, and we have a Splatoon coming. I want to play these games. And a Mario Odyssey's coming. I want to play these games. Show people what they can get from this new console to make them want to buy it, and also continue to support the games that you have. Just do it. And have them be a side-by-side. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a side-by-side. Ask Sony. They've done it for years, where they still came out with PS3 games after the PS4 was out. They still came out with PS4 games after the PS5 was out. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it. But of course, that's just my thoughts on it. What do you guys think? Do you think that we're basically at the end of the Switch's life cycle? Does this Nintendo Direct pretty much prove that at this point the Switch is basically at the tail end of its life? I've known this pretty much since the end of last year, so I've been preaching that, I think, all of this year. And that next year is the time for Nintendo to come out with a new console. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and I apologize for doubling the length of this video. I really did not intend to, but if you watch me all the way through, I really do appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you want, because I'm going to try to do more daily content like this, even though I've been going through a lot in my life. So it's just kind of less and less motivation for me to do this, but hopefully I can start getting back into the swing of things. And once again, just make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Love to hear what you guys have to say. But I hope you have yourself an excellent rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next video.